Vlog number 8, October 2nd, 1708, day 1. So on this date, 23 years ago, I started writing what I hoped would be my first novel series called The Primer, which was basically set in the year 2366 with a man who ended up being immortal from or at least physically immortal, from a substance known as Superseed X, which attached itself to his genome. However, my manifestations at work at the time led me to use that series as more of a negativity dumping ground, and therefore was not very much suitable for the mass audience. Nonetheless, I did use and still use that series as a foundational jumping point for other series, just like my older fan fictions and of course my current novel series being The Forge of Infinity. So I figured I'd give a shout out to that before starting the major lessons for this video, which will be spiritual orientations. And there are two spiritual orientations. There are service to other and service to self. Service to self is actually quite difficult to do. This is an orientation where the soul only thinks about itself 95% of the time or more, which is actually quite difficult to do. It only serves itself that much as well. So it sees other people as pawns for its own service and fools people, lies to people for this end, believing itself to be a god. Of course, with such a mindset, they're constantly after wisdom, but in the love department, they're not very good at. And it's love that grows the soul, ultimately. So, they say, well, love without wisdom is blind, which is kind of true, yes. But wisdom without love can be quite evil. So it's a big give and take. The other orientation is service to others, and this orientation covers souls that think and help others at least 50% of the time or more. Of course, it goes without saying that everybody's going to be a little bit selfish because we've got to fend for ourselves. We're incarnate in these bodies. It has its needs and so on. But the ultimate point is helping other people out most of the time, because it comes down to seeing the other as the self. And to gain that perspective takes a little bit of inner working to understand how mirroring works, which is whatever we see in others is an active mirror of what is going on inside of ourselves. And so then the battle becomes becoming aware of what that particular problem and or evil is inside of ourselves, so that that problem will not manifest itself again in the other person. Because remember, the body is mostly made of water, and water reflects itself. So whatever you're holding in our bodies of water, it's going to reflect itself in the other bodies of water, which is kind of interesting because water itself, you figure since we're mostly made of water, people would study water more often, but they think water is boring. Okay, whatever. So anyway, got a little sidetracked. Now, the vast majority of humans that have an incarnate soul, that is, are undecided. That is, they dither towards one direction and then they dither towards another direction, but they ultimately haven't decided yet. And they're still going through numerous incarnations to try to figure out their choice. Now, most of the time, they'll make the service to other choice. That's the natural path to follow, since most people want to feel loved. So that's the natural path to follow. Other souls who have a God complex will take the service to self path and instead will be focused on serving only themselves and dominating others in a very strong pecking order-based society, which is not very fun in my opinion. I'd rather not go through that. But yeah, the immature souls are almost always undecided. And then, of course, there's all the other humans that don't have a sparked soul. That is, they don't have a soul that reincarnates once their current incarnation ends. Any spirit that is gathered inside of their bodies is basically dissipated back into the ether and recycled, so to speak. So, yeah, that's basically how it works. At the current time, there's been a lot of more service to other souls coming down and incarnating or doing what's called a walk-in, which is the soul comes down into a body that's already born and just basically walks in as if it's an empty house. And these souls have been given many names. Some call them indigo souls, some call them star children. They're basically the same thing. They hail from higher densities, typically 4th and 5th, sometimes 6th. And they have particular missions here on Earth. They know what their missions are, even though they may not know what their missions are on certain levels quite yet. But they know what they are. And yeah, because the reason why they're here is because the Earth is undergoing a transformation of sorts on the spiritual level. For those who are empaths, they're well aware of what's going on. But for those who do not have that kind of sensory input, a lot of things have quickened, such as time. Time has quickened. And the reason for this is because the Earth is headed into the 4th density and is going to be a home for 4th density service to other entities. So what this means is we are undergoing what's called a spiritual harvest right now. This is something that happens periodically throughout the known universe at certain intervals, depending on the cycles of any certain world in question. But basically, souls that are considered to be in the service to other orientation will be considered to be 4th density spiritual others in that orientation, and they'll incarnate into a service to others body in the 4th density. The few souls that are considered service to self will either be born on a prison planet in 4th density, or they'll literally be taken off-world in human form and placed on a 4th density prison planet that is specifically only for service of self souls. And as for the undecided souls, what's going to happen to them is basically humankind is about to be phased out for many particular reasons. Much of which this is a lot of it's my opinion as to why, but much of it is because humans are just not self-taught. They don't like to teach themselves. They just like to do what they're told. Despite even having the freedom to do so, they like to walk into forms of slavery even. They even rather enslave themselves than free themselves. But ultimately, there's a difficulty in teaching themselves how to be free and helping other people because of it. And of course, there's probably other reasons. But anyway, once humans are phased out, these undecided souls will be moving into a new planet and will be incarnate on a water planet inside of an octopus entity. And of course, they're thinking, oh, but what about all my things? What about my money? What about my furniture? Or all this stuff is like, what can you do underwater? And it's like, well, you'd probably be surprised at what you can do underwater, because technology is really just a tool for helping the soul's growth. That's the real bottom line. It's not really just a means to an end. And yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. And this new world has been prepared specifically for humanity, as far as I know it. So correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you want. But that's as far as my understanding goes. And yeah, that's basically the current situation here spiritually. There's been a lot more service of self leaving the planet. Of course, these people like to take the higher echelons of power here on Earth because they care about power and controlling people and seeing them as cattle. And sounds like some people I know, quote unquote, know. And the service to other people typically work in the background. But yeah, the Earth in the future will be an interesting place. Depending on the soul group, a lot of people become either numb, unresponding, starving to death even, because there's a lot of cataclysms coming also, which I think will be for another video because I already spoke quite a bit. Or in the service to other group, it's going to actually be quite a good time, and they're going to have a fun time surviving without the so-called comforts and quote-unquote necessities that we quote-unquote need. Just make do by sharing what we have with other people. For instance, like bartering. And bartering is definitely going to be on the increase also as money becomes worthless and people's god of money decides not to listen to them anymore since the god of money doesn't really exist. As far as my information and where it comes from, a lot of it comes from ZetaTalk.com. That's a great place to start if you want to understand what's been going on in the world lately. Other parts of it come from the raw material, which I think a lot of people who are into the esoteric realm are well aware of. There's other areas like Aaron that is channeled by Barbara Brodsky. That's another one. And there's others out there too. So, just do your research and just trust your gut and listen to your heart as to which ones you think are correct or which are wrong, because there's a lot more wrong out there than correct. Knowing humans who like to take advantage of each other just for fame or money. So, okay, well, I think that does it for this video. So, appreciate you watching and enjoy the rest of your day.